It's too little too late, and the media goes missing when Republicans go on the offensive, and the media's belated coverage of the GOP's anti-democracy attacks will never catch up. Now, with the rise of Trumpism and American neo-fascism was decades in the making, contrary to what people, the hope peddlers and the wishcasters and professional centrists in the political media would like you to believe. The roots of this democracy and larger cultural crisis are very deep, and the poison that they unleashed is not going away anytime soon. Now, from the beginning of Obama's presidency, with the apparent white backlash to the country's first black president, and to when Trump announced that he would seek to capture the White House in 2016, loud warnings and alarms have been sounding about how neo-fascism and white supremacy are a clear, present, and growing danger in this country. The mainstream news media, political class, and other elites, however, respond with fucking laughter and fucking shrugs because they lied to themselves, whispering fables into each other's and to each other and their own ears that what Donald Trump and his movement represented could never win power here in America. And of course they were fucking wrong. We all were. Now Trump is running again for squatter on a platform of retribution and revenge. Throughout the age of Trump, the mainstream news media, except for on a very few noteworthy occasions, continue with their perpetual cycle of shock and surprise and dismay at the rights for freedom and attacks on democracy. As I and a few others with a public platform and a voice have consistently warned, the political elites and gatekeepers of the approved public discourse cannot and will not admit the true nature of an epistemic crisis, because to do so would challenge the legitimacy of their own authority and would implicate themselves in the crisis itself. Now it's been 7 years later. Trump continues to stalk the nation while Ron DeSantis and the other Republican fascists are perfecting and expanding their campaign to kill the country's multiracial pluralistic democracy and turn it into a version of Viktor Orban's Hungary or Vladimir Putin's Russia, and what in effect will be an American apartheid crystal fascist plutocracy for the 21st century. Now, while the folksy saying suggests that it's better to be late than never, such words do not perfectly apply to a struggle against fascism and other anti-democracy forces. In these last 7 years, America's political elites and other mainstream voices have lost a great amount of time in the struggle to defend the country's democracy, and they may not be able to recover. Now, to wit, the New York Times, which is one of the country's leading journals of public record and elite opinion, featured the Halloween 2 op-eds last weekend. Now, in his opinion essay, Take Threats of National Divorce Seriously, David French wrote this. About 2 weeks ago, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia kicked off a conversation about a national divorce, and it hasn't stopped there. Taylor Greene says she doesn't mean a true national division, yes she does, but rather an extreme form of federalism in which red and blue states essentially lived under completely different economic and constitutional structures while maintaining a normal national union. So, Taylor Greene, what you want is the blue states who are making more money than you. Basically, you want to live in a red state where you're poor all the time. Now, the very idea is absurd. It's incompatible with the Constitution, it's dangerous, and it's unworkable. It would destroy the economy, dislocate millions of Americans, and it would destabilize the globe, even in the absence of a civil war. But it's beyond unlikely that vast American armies would clash the way that they did from 1861 to 1865, and national separation would almost certainly be a violent mess. But there is only one way to describe an actual American divorce: an unmitigated disaster for America and the world. It can happen, but it's not likely, but it's possible, and we should take that possibility seriously. And where are we now? Has the fever passed? And not by a fucking long shot. But America is in the grips of a simply staggering amount of partisan animosity. Now, as we wrote in the newsletter last week, overwhelming majorities of Republicans and Democrats believe that their opponents are hateful, racist, brainwashed, and arrogant. That describes the Republican Party. The half of the respondents to a 2022 University of California Davis survey argued that in the next several years there will be a civil war in the United States that the Republicans want, and roughly 20% agreed that political violence was at least sometimes justifiable, which it's not. A recent Rasmussen poll reports shows that 34% of likely voters, including a plurality of Republicans, think that red and blue states need a national divorce. Now, in their essay, Florida is trying to take away the American right to speak freely. The Times editorial board warned this. Now, a homeowner gets angry at a county commission over a zoning dispute, and it writes a Facebook post accusing a local building official of being in the pocket of developers. A right-wing broadcaster criticizing border policies accuses the Secretary of Homeland Security of being a traitor when a lot of the Republicans are. A parent upset about the removal of a gay-themed book from library shelves goes to a school board meeting and calls the board chairman a bigot and a homophobic. All three are examples of Americans engaging in clamorous but perfectly legal speech about public figures that is broadly protected by the Constitution. Now, the Supreme Court, in a case that dates back nearly 60 years ago, ruled that even if that speech might be damaging or include errors, it should generally be protected against claims of libel and slander. All three would lose that protection and be the subject to ruinous defamation lawsuits under a bill that is moving through the Florida House and is based on a long-standing goal of Governor Ron DeSantis. The bill represents a dangerous threat to free expression on the United States, and not only for the news media, but for all Americans. And whatever their political beliefs are, there's still time for Florida lawmakers to reject this crude pandering and ensure that their constituents retain the right to free speech, which they can care less. But as writer and author Jeff Sharlet, who has been one of the most consistent and stalwart voices sounding the alarm about the age of Trump and the ascendant American neo-fascism, noted on Twitter, even now, the recognition of the moment's peril has been slowly moving. When some described Trump on November 20 as pursuing a slow-motion coup, the responsible folks scoffed. Remember, too, even after J6 resistance to now, when they accepted the term insurrection, the Klan insurrection. Now, back in the spring of 2021, when he began planning reporting for his book, The Undertows: Scenes from a Slow Civil War, he was almost embarrassed to speak of the Civil War, and if I did, responsible acquaintances said, "Oh, come on, now centrist threats fascist Congresswomen propose." Now, Charlotte and other alarm sounders, me included, were told that we had Trump derangement syndrome, which we don't, or were hysterical or alarmist or paranoid or opportunist. The latter assertion is especially laughable given the personal cost to one's physical, emotional, and physical health from being the critical civic work of warning about Trump and neo-fascism and white supremacy when it was so much easier to write about other things that are comparatively trivial, less demanding and utterly disposable. Now, moreover, doing the very hard work of consistently warning the American people about the dangers of Trumpism and neo-fascism and that larger family of threats, as opposed to writing clickbait hot takes, is largely a thankless job. There are books and stories to be written, and perhaps I will have to write one of them about the heart attacks, suicide, strokes, alcohol and drug abuse, depression, and other maladies and shortened lives that are more generally than those of us who have chosen to commit ourselves to resisting the rise of Trump and the neo-fascism in America and around the world that we have experienced and continue to see. Now, Trump and his movement may one day dissipate, which, God willing, our invisible fear man willing, our injuries and losses will linger on, but we are not the same people anymore. Now, in the end, the American news media as an industry will not consistently oppose Trump or the larger conservative movement because it needs to have access to those voices and personalities to make money. The American news media is preparing for Trump or DeSantis or another successor, and the Republican fascists to return to the White House, hopefully neither one of them, to take full control of Congress and the United States government. Now, during the last 7 years, the New York Times and other leading newspapers and media outlets have had those occasional moments when they rise to the occasion and speak truth to power about warning the American people and the world about the dangers of Trump, neo-fascism, and their forces. But those moments are undercut, if not nullified, and by how those same news media outlets then give precious space to former Trump regime members, the Republican fascists, conservatives, and others who are enemies of multiracial, pluralistic democracy and human progress. Now, even worse, they continue to do reporting and future other stories that normalize Trump, DeSantis, and the other Republican fascists and their followers. Public opinion polls and other research shows that the American news media is experiencing a legitimacy crisis. Now, this is both expected and warranted, but why should the American people trust the mainstream news media when one day they're sounding the alarm about Trump and the neo-fascists and other illiberal threats to the country's democracy and future, and then on the same day or soon after are contradicting themselves by featuring, in the interest of fairness and balance, anti-democracy voices, i.e. conservatives and neo-fascists, who they elevate as opposed to truth tellers and essential public voices. Now, pro-democracy journalism is not a talking point, but it should be a commitment and a vocation. The American news media needs to learn and follow through on that lesson if its warnings about fascism and other great troubles are to be believed, and we the Americans are running out of time to save our fucking country. So if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just a little as a few bucks a video or month, your donation can help go a long way. And also leave a comment, let me know what you think. And thanks for listening.